Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tennyson E Stead, writer and director of Quantum Theory, founding member of Eight-Sided Films. Today, I'd like to talk about one of the details that's come up in the production work on our upcoming web series, Declassified, which, if folks don't know, is a series of documentary archives being released by the government that were recorded by an agency called the Bureau of Applied Defense Development that undertook a number of projects during the Cold War and the space race that they probably shouldn't have. And the first of those projects is called Project Icarus, and it's the story of an astronaut who is not in the space program per se, by the name of Wick Pierce, who was recruited by the Bureau to fly an Apollo command capsule and module to Saturn's moon of Titan using a Saturn V rocket and some experimental nuclear rocketry that was in development. So it's the story of a person crammed into a tiny little space for 8 years, trying to hold himself and his spacecraft together so that he can do the thing that he's there to do, and complete the investment that's been made. And the whole thing's shot from the little black and white camera that's being radioed back to Earth to document all of this. And so sort of correlated to that, I've been working with a production designer, and on my birthday I took a couple of friends to see the Endeavour shuttle in the California Science Center. And as it turns out, they also, in case you're not aware, they also have right there by USC, they have an Apollo capsule and a Gemini capsule and a Mercury capsule. So they have a whole matching set, which is pretty amazing to look into. But when you go into the big shuttle hangar, one of the first things that you notice is that the spaceship looks like paper mache. And that's because it's made of ceramics. And one of the things that you sort of naturally assume is that it would look very machined and it would look very what we call technological. But that's not the case. And when there's one of the other things they have in the hangar is a space lab, which is the experimental module that would drop into the shuttle bay and take up a little bit of the cargo bay and give astronauts a little extra space for scientific experiments. And everything in Space Lab is handmade. The whole thing. There's, handmade sheets of what might be asbestos insulation that are tied together with little asbestos strings, and you can see the fingerprints of the engineers in the ceramic. The whole thing is so handmade that you can literally see the fingerprints of the people that built it. And the reason that's the case, obviously, is because you don't need more than one. You wouldn't build machines to build these things because they're not going to be built a second time. Or if they are, they'll only be built twice or 3 times. You're not going to ever need an assembly line for these machines. So they were all built by the engineers that designed them and machined by people who knew how to take their hands and machine things, as opposed to by telling robots to do it. And, and one of the sort of assumptions that people make visually when they look at the space program is that it must be very sterile and it must be very sort of smooth, and it can't be. It absolutely can't be. There's no way. It's not when you're doing all of this work. Every single tile on the space shuttle was ground by someone who knew what angle it needed to be to match up with the other tiles. And it's terrifying almost when you think about it, to think that your life is in the hands physically of these people, but it absolutely is. You can see how each tile was ground to fit the tiles around it, not by a big machine that went foop, but by people who painstakingly went over it and over it and over it and over it. And so what does this have to do with Eight-Sided Films, and what does this have to do with the creative process? Well, if you go back to the Developmental Breakdown, and Lee, if you could post a link down below to the article called Narrative Action in Design, one of the things that I'm always talking about is how the action of a story is everything in film. And one of the things we have to do in production is provide context for the actions of the main characters by providing the actions of everybody else in the world. That's a big part of what we do. And production design, as much as anything else, because the world that we live in is built by the people that came before us. Everything we have and everything we, if I own something, it's because I went and bought it. Why did I do that? Was this the most convenient thing? People don't wind up with their perfect home. They don't wind up with all the perfect little details. There's not a catalog of all the things that they could possibly ever want, and then they just go through and find the best of everything and put it in their home. There's a million different reasons why people make the decisions that they do, and part of a costume designer's job, in fact, almost all of a costume designer's job, is seeing those decisions of a character down the road. Oh, well, this is a sweater she got from her mom because she was too broke. Those kinds of things. And walking into a world, at the Endeavor exhibit where everything is handmade, where engineers came and built all this stuff to keep people alive in space and to make the experiments possible. You take a step back and you look at a project like Quantum Theory or Declassified, and it shades a very different light on the detail that you're going to be experiencing when you watch the show. And I think that's exciting. I think that's really cool. So, from a design perspective, I would encourage anyone to go and look at some of the artifacts left over from the space program, because there's going to be telltale signs right there in front of you of who came by and put it together and how it was tied together, and and there'll be fingerprints on it. It literally embedded in if it's made of ceramic, there'll be fingerprints in the ceramic. If it's made of plastic, it won't be perfectly smooth. There'll be a mold that'll been built for it, and the mold will have been used once to make the thing that you're looking at. I guess I'm just appreciating a little bit more than usual through Declassified and through my recent experience, just how much the actions that we undertake make up the world around us. And I'm recommitting to visually representing that in my own work, and I think that it would be a good experience for anybody else who does visual work in the arts to go and have a look at some of this stuff, because it isn't what you expect. Thank you very much. This is Tennyson E Stead signing off. Oh, you know what? Before I go, if you like the video, give us a little like right down here. Give us a subscribe if you want to see more. If you want to see Declassified when we're finished with it, which will probably be in about a month and a half, give us a subscribe right over here. and thank you very much for watching. Have a great evening. Take care. Bye-bye.